And while the entire subject of India and US ties remain a big question, a former Ambassador of the United States to the UN, Nikki Haley, has written an article, and joining us now is her co-author, Bill Drexel of the Hudson Institute. Bill Drexel, thanks so much for joining us. And you've written in this recent article with Nikki Haley that scuttling 25 years of momentum with the only country that can serve as a counterweight to Chinese dominance in Asia would be a strategic disaster. Now, if US views India as a critical partner against China, why then is President Trump threatening India with crippling tariffs instead of giving New Delhi the breathing room it needs to align more closely with Washington?
Well, I think there are a number of reasons why we're in the middle of this situation that we're in. Long term, I think American and Indian interests are highly aligned. And so I think the friction we're in now will be for a temporary time. The question is, how temporary is it? The Trump administration wants to really fundamentally rebalance trade arrangements around the world. With India, the protectionism was more significant than a lot of other friendly countries. So I think we could have predicted before this happened that this was going to be a particularly rough patch. But I think another point to really raise here is that you have a lot more kind of disagreements with someone who's close to you, like your wife, than you do with your third cousin, right? So as the relationship grows, as we become more interdependent on one another, hard conversations will also grow.
Yeah, but the kind of language being used, calling India a dead economy when it's one of the fastest growing large economies of the world. You have Caroline Levitt, who the other day was saying that there are sanctions against India. A pretty strong word, because that actually hasn't been officially announced for about 2.5 decades since the Clinton administration. And those are the kind of statements coming out, perhaps a statement a day, which India is viewing as particularly provocative, given that there's nothing of the sort coming out from India's side.
Yeah, so there have been some strong statements. This administration is not known for its diplomatic subtlety, so to speak. President Trump and others in an administration often take big swings verbally at different individuals, different groups, different nations. But they also make big swings in the other direction. President Trump, he also likes big reversals. Right now, he's highly focused on the Russia-Ukraine situation, and that's, I think, at the root of a lot of the, half of the tariffs. But I also think that part of what's going on here, too, is that, the U.S. government is big, and there are different parts of the U.S. government trying to address different parts of the U.S.-India relationship at the same time, but in a less coordinated fashion than might ordinarily be the case, given that the National Security Council has largely been gutted at the present moment, and we still haven't confirmed our kind of authority in the State Department for South Asia. So there are a lot of missing pieces here. We've got national security concerns, we've got trade concerns, and then we've got interpersonal issues all kind of coalescing at once. But like I say, big reversals are also possible with this administration.
Right. But, I'm going to come to the trade aspect first, because while, of course, you're talking about India being protectionist, there are many economists here in India who would argue that, yes, there have been those trade barriers, but those percentages, those barriers have been slowly but surely coming down. There's been a downward trend, which is not being acknowledged. And secondly, doesn't this tariff war risk undermining the 25 years of painstakingly built goodwill and essentially shooting the U.S. strategy in the foot?
I'll answer those in reverse. So I think that, yes, the U.S.-Indian relationship is so important for the century ahead, and getting fixated on any one issue to the detriment of others would be a strategic disaster. So if this trade war ends in an enduring rupture between the United States and India, that would be a major loss for both countries. And there's no question that this trade war and other issues have pushed U.S.-India relations to the lowest point in the last quarter century. So what we're seeing is very concerning.
Right.
That said,
yeah, go ahead.
well, it's not irredeemable. as we say, the Trump administration, it changes course very dramatically, very quickly, very often. So it's hard to say that this is going to be an enduring situation, and I, for one, really hope that it isn't.
Right. One of the other major concerns over here, in terms of what we are talking about, President Trump, in fact, claiming to prioritize India-US relations are concerned, while simultaneously escalating disputes over trade and ceasefire diplomacy with Pakistan, because there are many who believe that these are actions that are going to seriously erode trust.
Yeah, I think that this certainly has been a major point of friction. There's no doubt about it. There's been an asymmetry in how Pakistani officials have really been trying to cozy up to Trump, including by nominating him for the Nobel. I think there's a middle, to my mind, if I look back on what's gone wrong in the last 5 months or so, I point to two things. One is that after the Pahalgam brutal terrorist attack, the Quad did not come out immediately and give commensurate support to India that China gave to Pakistan. I think that was a major blunder. Likewise, it's true that this is a very sensitive issue, and the role of the United States is sensitive in any discussions about ceasefires, etc. But if you rewind to prior moments of friction between India and Pakistan, there was a time when Prime Minister Vajpayee thanked the United States for facilitating discussions. I think something on that level, if India had come out and shown some similar sentiment, I think that would have gone a very long way to kind of healing, or at least not escalating this situation that we're in now.
Yeah, but the point is this, that there is domestic pressures that, or perhaps the want of a Nobel Prize that President Trump may be looking at. But there are domestic pressures over here on the regime as well, which make it extremely sensitive. And India's stated policy has always been that there is no question of any third-party intervention when it comes to talks between India and Pakistan. And that's been the stated position for not now, but for decades.
Yeah, I think that that's been consistent, and most India watchers in the United States fully understand that. I think one of the issues here is that we don't seem to have any very high level officials who have the ear of Trump with that intuitive sense of how India will respond to situations like this. I think that's a major strategic blunder on the United States' part. To be clear, I think that, and we say this at the end of our op-ed that I wrote with Ambassador Haley, that the United States really needs to devote similar amounts of attention to India that it devotes to other highly important countries like China or Israel. And at the moment, that does not seem to be the case. And that's an issue that we need to fix.
Right. Let me come to the other big elephant in the room, which is, of course, and you've noted in your piece that India has faced a lot of pressure over Russian oil purchases, while China, which is one of Moscow's largest customers, has thus far avoided sanctions. Now, this is a big disparity that's being pointed out, and it reflects a certain cynicism in the approach towards treating a democratic partner more harshly than an authoritarian rival. How do you look at this?
I think there are a couple factors at play here. Officials from the administration have pointed to the fact that India's consumption of Russian oil increased dramatically after the war started. But yes, that was also related to a request to control oil prices from us. What I think is really going on here is that President Trump really wants to hit this issue hard, and he wants to address the China issue, which is, many layered, at another time. And so I think that what we're seeing now is just that, he's going after India first, but not, I doubt it will be exclusively. I think it's a question of sequencing, not a question of favoritism ultimately.
And what about EU, which also takes in a lot of energy from Russia? EU has not faced any such sanctions. In fact, the kind of or tariffs, the tariff rate decided is far less in that case as well.
Yes, there are definitely asymmetries and inconsistencies in the way that the United States has been approaching this issue. But at the end of the day, it's also true that it is, a major consumer. Trump is very concerned about this war and would like to bring it to a ceasefire very, very quickly. But as I say, there are inconsistencies.
Which, according to you, is the bigger issue? What do you think has irked President Trump the most? Whether it's the purchase of Russian oil or the fact that he believes India didn't give him enough credit for his claims about mediating between India and Pakistan?
That's a very difficult question, and I wouldn't know how to begin to answer it, not being in the mind of Trump. And I think really no one knows. But as it stands, I mean, both have contributed. I think a lot of the issue that we're facing today is that there's a conjunction of several somewhat incidental issues, right? You've got the personalistic credit issue, you've got the trade issue that was coming for everyone, and you've got the Russia war issue. All three happen to be occurring at the same time, which has this amplifying effect and makes it more difficult to address any one. But we have to disentangle these and address them one by one as best we can, because the future of both of our nations really depends on it.
Now, one of the things that you've argued in the article, and you've kind of referred to that as well, is that the most urgent priority should be to reverse the downward spiral, which you just mentioned, and that will require, you say, direct talks between President Trump and Prime Minister Modi. Given Trump's transactional style of diplomacy, do you think that India can realistically trust him to invest in a long-term strategic relationship rather than short-term advantage? Because this is a relationship that has been built with bipartisanship on both sides, and that, is a very big thing, because that level of trust somewhere or the other, there's a perception here in India, seems to have broken.
Right. I think it's going to be difficult to rebuild trust, but a lot of this also, we need to remember, is very contingent on President Trump as an unusual politician and personality. This is very personality driven. It still remains the case that if you ask perhaps any India watcher in Washington, D.C. today, all of us see the relationship as incredibly important and non-negotiable. So President Trump is maybe unusual in his methods and takes, as I mentioned before, big swings in different directions and corrects and so on. But I think we can say two things. One is that even if this kind of era of friction lasted several more months, I think it'll get back on track within his presidency, certainly, and probably within a year, I hope, if not sooner. But we'll look, my hope and what I think the strategic demands of both countries necessitates is that we'll look at this as a blip, right? Even longer term, though, the fact of the matter is the United States and India have tremendous incentives to cooperate more closely. And that will push the two countries together long term. And I think we can trust in that, even if there are leaders with very unique negotiation styles and diplomatic tactics that might cause, perturbations in that otherwise upward trajectory.
And finally, Bill, I'm going to ask you an even more difficult question. President Trump has made no bones about the fact that he wants the Nobel Peace Prize. Do you think he deserves it?
I don't have a good answer to that. I think it's going to depend on the Nobel Committee, and I'm doubtful that they are going to give it to him. And that's as much as I can say. But it's at least interesting how much of a priority this has become, and we'll see where it goes.
All right. Difficult question for you to answer sitting in Washington, D.C. indeed. And it's just a number of times that it's been mentioned that makes it feel like it is one of the priorities in the minds of President Trump. But thank you so much, Bill, for joining us and breaking this down for our viewers.